I'm Dr. G, and for the past 10 years of my life, I've been passionate about all things holistic healing. I've been committed to healing myself and others from the inside out by incorporating some of the most effective modalities for healing the mental, the emotional, and the physical. I've learned that they give us the opportunity to be our most authentic and powerful selves. Heal Thyself is a show dedicated to just that. Today's show is going to be incredible, and I say it every week, of course I do, because it is incredible. Knowledge bombs of digestible information to empower and create clarity on what the highest version of us looks like. Product reviews to provide informed consent so you can buy the safest and best products out there. Better than the first two that I spoke about, and you're getting other B vitamins, which are energizing, right? Get off of it, throw it away. And special guest segments with some of the brightest and most elite minds in their field.
So what is that like on my nervous system? 6 hours of holding that emotion.
Here's the earth. Here's the mechanisms and mechanics of an earth when it breathes. We would think much different about that asthma patient that shows up.
All to create change in all the parts that make you, you, so we can start healing ourselves and each other. All right, everyone, welcome to the newest episode of Heal Thyself. As always, thank you for joining the show and taking time out of your day. So much love, so much gratitude coming from me because you all have helped build this show to what it is and continue it growing. Now, before we get into the show, I'm always going to say, and I say this every once in a while, rate, review, subscribe. Rate, review, subscribe really helps the show expand and grow a lot more. And I appreciate you taking the time out. Literally takes a second, but every time you do those things, it really helps push this information to other people. So now the Knowledge Bomb segment, we're going to talk about getting off of drinking alcohol. That might be the hardest thing to do, especially based on the social fabric that we're in and how common it is left and right. It is commonplace always, and we want to make sure that we have the foundation to move swiftly through it when we want to. So I'm going to help with some of the steps that I used when I did it. Product review, we're going to go over some of the restaurants out there. What restaurants out there are utilizing antibiotic dense, rich meat? It's a big problem, especially with antibiotic resistance. So I don't eat fast food necessarily, and I know a lot of you don't, but when you do, and you're on the road and you got to pick up something, where do you go? I'm going to give you that guide. We have a very, very special guest today. It's going to be Ian Mitchell. Ian Mitchell is a research scientist. It's going to be an amazing, amazing show. This man is, to date, one of the smartest people I have ever met in my life. And it's not an understatement. It is like once a century type smart. So the information he's going to put out there is so empowering about how he and we can change the world. So I can't wait to get into that interview. Before we do, I mentioned about alcohol and how it's detrimental to all parts of our lives, but especially our body. We know that it affects us. There's research coming out. It affects our gut. It affects our energy. It affects our mood. It affects our sleep. But let me tell you what really helps with sleep. And this is why we love partnering with Birch Mattress. I want to tell you all about Birch Living. They're the new mattress. It's been game changing. I've had it for now about 3 months. It's amazing. It helps the quality of my sleep be so, so much better. My girlfriend and I sleep on it, and I never wake up. And I wake up to a drop of a pin. If an inchworm walks in the room, I will wake up. If a feather falls on the bed, I will wake up, but I do not wake up. So I've been getting some really, really good deep sleep, and Birch Living is amazing. It's a premium mattress in a box company, and it makes mattresses and other sleep products, right, that are not only extremely comfortable, check, environmentally conscious, check, non-toxic, check, check, and it's also really, really cool and stylish overall. Mattress is organic, non-toxic, made in America. Only 4 materials are used, straight from nature: organic latex, New Zealand wool, cruelty-free, American steel, and organic cotton. My whole thing behind this has been always, we sleep 7, 8, 9 hours in bed. We're on the interface of the bed. We are breathing in so many toxins when we have a really poor quality bed, and we're doing it for such a long time. So that's why non-toxic beds are really an investment that can make a major change overall and over time in your health. So lastly, each Birch mattress comes with 2 of their EcoRest pillows, and they're made from recycled plastic bottles, which is amazing. Yes, plastic bottles. And anytime that you order a Birch mattress, you're going to get a 100-night sleep trial and you're going to get a 10-year warranty. So you may be nervous because you never tried it and you're going to make an investment on a bed. Well, the beautiful thing is Birch is giving you a 3-month sleep trial. You can test the mattress out. If you're not a fan, Birch is going to come pick up the mattress, you're going to get a full refund. If you love Birch mattress and you really think this is for you and you feel my energy coming out of it and how much I love it, you can click on birchliving.com/heal thyself. You're going to get $200 off of your first mattress and those 2 free pillows that I was just talking about. All right, everyone. So as I mentioned in the intro, I wanted to talk about moving and transitioning away from alcohol. Now, the reason I'm doing this again is because there was such a response from you all every time I mention alcohol, right? The first part came when I mentioned about what interventions we can do to protect ourselves, not fully, but really try to protect ourselves from drinking and consuming alcohol, especially if it's consistent. And I talk about matcha, and that was so well received. Then came the part about asking the question, posing the question, why do you drink alcohol? And that was so well received. Actually, those 2 were the best posts ever in 5 years of doing things on Instagram and social media. So that led me to want to support you all more by helping guide you into some of the things that I did when I transitioned away that has helped me. And hopefully you're inspired and it helps you. The difficult part is that alcohol is part of the social fabric. That's the problem. It becomes synonymous and normalized when there's something to do that is social. Particularly, even if it's at a restaurant, it doesn't have to be a bar, it doesn't have to be a club. Even in a restaurant, there's always a drink menu and it's always right next to the food menu, right? And because it's so normalized and because we're so much exposed to it day in and day out, it becomes, in our minds, more integrated as an everyday. And by virtue of that, we just look at it as something that is normal and not as bad as we would think, because if it was, everyone would be like, no, we have to stay away from it. But as I mentioned before in the past show, we learn more and more through research that there's light being shed on just how much issue there is and how it affects us physically. And more studies are coming out. But today I want to share my process in particular of how I got off of it and maybe, hopefully, help guide you. So the physical part, unless you have alcohol addiction, which is a whole nother animal, and we could talk about if you're just drinking socially but not addicted to it, or lack of better terms, just not fully an addict to alcohol and depending on it to survive or to function. But if you're drinking it socially, but it really has become part of it, there is a level of addiction there. But still, the physical cessation of it is the easier part. The mental, emotional, and social pressures, oh boy, that's the hardest part. So real quick, if you suffer with alcoholism, it would be more indicated to look for formal help, formal programs to help guide you. But regardless, any of these recs are here for you too. But to it, alcohol is equated with the social settings. We know that, you end the week and you celebrate when you go out to eat or you go out to a bar and you meet your friends or happy hours, everything, or it's a crutch or both. But for many people who it's a crutch for, as I talked about on the last show, it provides us with this safety net, right? In a social setting where we know if our inhibitions come down, then we're comfortable in our own skin. We're comfortable in our own bodies. We're comfortable with our own creativity or wit or how, if we could talk to a group, all of these things come up. Well, the first real step is in the decision. And the way that I approached it was I asked if it served me. Actually, even before I even asked if it served me, my body was telling me it wasn't serving me. And I knew it because my body was not tolerating it like it used to. I was hurting from it. And it led me to the point then to listen to my body enough where mentally I asked myself, does it serve me? Does it feel good to me? Does my body feel good? Is my physical health getting better or has it gotten worse? What about my mental health? More times than not, you're going to find the answer to all of those is no. It doesn't feel good to you. Your physical health isn't getting better and doesn't necessarily serve you. To tease out a few things, serving you means your highest self, not serving you if you go to a bar or a club or restaurant and you need it and it serves you because it gives you a crutch. That's sort of an illusionary serve. I'm talking about your highest self. Is it holding you back from being your highest self? And many times the answer is yes. So If you find yourself questioning all of these, this can lead to an open path for you and shed some light into, okay, well, maybe it's time to start looking and putting life and social fabric through a different lens. So, episode 123, I spoke about the new studies on it, the detrimental effect, how it can really, really take a toll on your physical health, especially the brain. It's something that we don't know. And if you listen to that episode, you know that it's a cumulative dosage. It is dose dependent, meaning the earlier you stop drinking alcohol, the better, basically. So once you decide to open that door, you're going to have a new relationship and a new confidence with yourself, which is really powerful. So the second part, now here's where it starts getting hard. The second part is speaking your truth. So this one's really hard for many people. But here's the key to telling others why you do not drink anymore, or you're lowering your alcohol intake, or whatever it may be, whatever your truth is. You can't sound condescending. Don't sound condescending. Do not sound judgmental of your newfound decision, right? Speak of it as your truth, as your decision for yourself. And make sure when you communicate with people your decision, it's rooted in love. That's really important because people will feel that. People will feel the love you have for yourself and the compassion you speak your own truth to others. Very important. People will hear less the words you say, but they'll feel your newfound empowerment. They'll feel that decision you made. They'll feel that you're doing better for your health on all facets. That's how you spread positive influence. It's not necessarily even the words you say, it's how you say it. It's the energy behind it. You're going to find people are not going to agree with you. They're going to give you a hard time about your decision, whether it be friends, family, coworkers. And many times what's happening is you're pulling up the figurative mirror right in front of them with your decision. And why? Because we drink alcohol so often and it becomes our crutch and it helps us really be authentic and without fear of judgment, which is something that is easy to do. That's the easy road. The harder road is choosing not to take that crutch. And the harder road, but more long-term, healthier, sustainable road is deciding to remove those illusionary fears and let yourself express yourself to the highest level, right? And this is going to happen always. But remember, stand by your truth and give love always. You're not here to change people through words. You're here to show them how you feel with your vibration, how it has elevated. Then, if and only if they ask how you got where you were, how you're so confident in your own skin, then that's when you reach out your hand in love and health, and then you help guide them with what you did. Number 3, observe. Really important step to this. Things are going to change socially for you. You're going to find yourself uncomfortable and tempted to go straight to the bar. You may find you need a drink to socialize, or you may find that you need a drink to be witty or funny or talk to a large group. Whatever stories we told ourselves, you'll see that discomfort's going to come up. And it's exactly what we need to come back to ourselves. You need to stand clear on what you're grounded in your decision and keep that with a good, really strong focus. And something to remember, really important thing to remember. You can be all of the things that alcohol brings out in you, right? Whether positive or negative. It's a story you told yourself based on a past experience. But if you know how powerful and beautiful your fullest expression of yourself is, then you would not have to worry about judgment for others because it wouldn't exist. But you stay grounded and you can be yourself. You can dance if you think you can't. You can be creative and funny and witty if you think you are not. You can be intimate and deep if you think you can't be. All of the stories you told yourself are not true. Everything is accessible for you. And you certainly don't need alcohol to loosen you up. It's a myth. It's an illusion that doesn't serve us anymore. Alcohol simply shows you what is there. I'll repeat that. Alcohol shows you what is always there, what's always been there. Now you don't need to rely on it because you made a decision to reduce that or end it. So lean into that discomfort, start showing up and opening up those expressive parts of yourself. It's the most beautiful thing in the world to see someone who's opened up and expressing who they are. You may soon find that you don't align or resonate with the energy at the bars or the clubs or wherever you are frequenting those venues. You may also find that you have a lot less in common with the people that you were spending time with and partying with. You may also find that the time you spend in bars and clubs, well, you begin to prefer to do other things that are more creative or fulfilling with your time. Your values will shift. Your relationships will deepen. Your confidence socially will elevate. You're going to feel better in your body. And most importantly, of all of this, your energy changes, your frequency changes, and people begin to feel it. They start seeing a healthier physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual version of you, and you are embodying a new self. And that self becomes much more powerful, much more creative, much more inspiring. It's the most beautiful thing. So if you're transitioning and you're having trouble through it, DM me on Instagram. If I don't answer in a week, email me. This is my email, info@docgonzalez.com, info@docgonzalez.com. And then send me what your Instagram handle is. Say I sent you a message. I'm getting off of alcohol. I'm having a hard time, or really want to know what steps may help me. Here's my situation. I'll go back. I'll find your Instagram handle. I will respond with a voice note and help support you in this transition. Because 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I was doing this transition, I wish that I had some guidance, because it can be difficult, especially when you're starting to find your new ground, your new relationships, your new comfortability. All the while you're trying to find what self-expression means. All the while you're letting go of these stories of fear that are holding you back from being your high self. It can be a little bit of a whirlwind, but I'm here to support you all. So do that. If you feel called and feel that it's time, I'm here for you. All right. Ready for the product review? This is going to be a really interesting one. So check it out. Let's jump into it. Okay, product review time. Well, this segment is not necessarily product specific, but more actually restaurant chain advice. So let me preface, I do not prefer to eat at fast food restaurants. I really hardly ever do, maybe once a year. And we'll talk about which one. But the USPIRG report came out this year. It's called actually the Chain Report. And this is edition number 6, 2021. And basically what they do, amongst other things when it comes to the food industry, but this scorecard is a card that comes out every single year. And we look at American restaurant chains, these fast food chains, and they look at the policy on antibiotics in the meat, right? So basically what's happening is this group is giving letter grades to all of these restaurant chains based on how much these restaurant chains are utilizing antibiotics in their meat. So me, I'm not a meat eater, but I know many people are. And I don't really go to fast food restaurants, if ever, but I know many people do. It's our responsibility to have that information so we can make an informed decision, right? So I'm going to give you this information. You're going to go, oh, that restaurant got scored an F. I didn't know that restaurant scored an A. Now you have this information to work with. Whether you keep going to your F restaurant because you love it, that's on you, right? But at least you have information that you're working from. And this is the whole point of the show, right? This informed consent part. So why antibiotics in meat? What's up with that? Is it an issue? Yeah, actually 2/3 of antibiotics go to livestock. Well, for one, we're inundated as it is. Overuse of antibiotics is a major problem in healthcare. But also it affects our healthy bacteria, particularly the gut bacteria, but also our full body microbiome. So based on the use of antibiotics, right, the type and the duration, it depends on how much it's going to affect us. But regardless, it will have an effect to our bacteria. And it's really important that we utilize them only when necessary. And we're not doing that in medicine. And we're certainly not doing that when we're consuming these foods. But it's a global health crisis and a major threat to our health. Antibiotic resistance is opening a door for future infection. And we know this. According to the World Health Organization and CDC, it is considered a top global health threat. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, that's a branch of the CDC, at least 35,000 people will die from resistant infections, antibiotic-resistant infections. But the Journal of Infection Control and Hospital Epidemiology actually said that that number is way higher. Up to 160,000 people will die from antibiotic-resistant infections. So the question is now, do some of your fast food chains fall into the F score? Well, let's go over which ones scored F for the worst quality meat. Burger King, Panda Express, Sonic, DQ, Dairy Queen. I didn't even know they had meat. I thought it was just all ice cream. Olive Garden, that was my high school date spot. Little Caesars, Domino's, Pizza Hut. That's no surprise. I don't really even consider this pizza. Arby's, Buffalo Wild Wings, and Starbucks. All scored an F for the worst quality antibiotic dense meat. Who got a D? Taco Bell, Applebee's. That was my college date spot. Half price appetizers I used to get, these quesadillas, chicken quesadillas. They were the best. I thought I was balling, but I was on a college budget. IHOP. Okay, who got a C grade? McDonald's, surprisingly, fell into a C grade, Wendy's and Subway. No one got a B grade. And now we have an A minus, and that's Panera. And an A, dun dun dun, is Chipotle. So if any fast food restaurant I go to, it would be Chipotle. So anytime I'm on the road, I really need to eat, and I know that there's no healthy food, I usually will stop off at Chipotle and get some rice and beans and some greens. But if you are consuming meat, I would recommend that Chipotle or Panera are the only places you go when on the road or when in the rush to get your food, particularly because of the antibiotic resistance issue. And if you've taken a lot of antibiotics in your life or on antibiotics, or have taken antibiotics this year, I would actually really start looking away from any of the restaurants that you may be frequenting that are from C, D, and F. So I really hope that helped with the product review, gave you some guidance on where to go when you need to, and you're on the run. Before we get into the show, I want to tell you what I've been using to help support my digestive system when I'm eating meals, particularly big ones. So for 3.5 months now, I've been using the BioOptimizer's mast enzymes. So what happens is your body's natural ability to digest food starts declining with age. And this is because your body produces fewer and fewer enzymes over time. Now, what happens when your body starts producing fewer and fewer enzymes is that we start feeling full and bloated after meals. And for many of us, this rings a bell. For me in particular, I found that when I was eating big, heavy meals, I found like I had a brick in my stomach and I was bloated for quite a while. So I've been using the BioOptimizer's mast enzymes with every single meal, and that's been really, really helpful at helping my body digest those proteins, fats, and carbs efficiently. So now I'm not experiencing that bloating that I was experiencing before. In my opinion, this is the best digestive enzyme out there. It offers a full spectrum of enzymes that are helpful for breaking down fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And it's helping support your pancreas in the digestive process. So after taking these, you may find you have less bloating and your stomach feels flatter. So the best part is that as you're utilizing these enzymes, it's helping break down these nutrients and it's increasing your absorbability. So if you're eating a healthy meal, you're getting the most amount of nutrients that you can be. So I want you to all check it out. Here's the offer for my Heal SL family. You're going to go to www.masszymes.com/Dr. G and use the code DRG10 for a 10% discount. It's www.masszymes.com/DRG. And the code is DRG10. You're going to get 10% off. So give one bottle a try, utilize it with your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner. Do it consistently every single day and see if your digestive symptoms improve over time. All right, everyone. Today's special guest, man, he's an incredible guy, and I'm going to tell you why. Ian Mitchell, he's a research scientist. He does R&D at Dave Asprey's Biohacked, and he's a chief scientist at Biocharge and the founder of Wizard Sciences. So he's a very busy man, and I use some of these products, but we're going to talk about it. But I'm coming on this interview with you, and I want to learn all the exciting stuff that you're working on, Ian. When I spoke to you on the phone, we did a quick chat a few months ago, and I was like, damn, this guy's next level. I was like, this guy is next level. The way he sees things, and I was like, we got to get you on the show and we need to impart this knowledge on everyone. But man, how did you get into this world, right? Like, did you, when you were little, did you want to get into the research development, product development, like everything that you're doing? What was it that really pulled you in here?
Yeah, I did actually. My mom always jokes when I was a kid, I used to fill our refrigerator at the house with what I called Dissolve. And basically she would open up the refrigerator and there would be pretty much anything that would hold a liquid was filled with blends and compounds. And I was constantly buying, the old school chemistry sets and, taught myself how to do, pretty decent chemistry as a little kid. And then when I was in school, I found that I kind of excelled at chemistry. And so I went to school and studied chemistry. And actually at the time, what I really wanted to do was environmental cleanups. I just, I've always had kind of a soft spot for humanity, not so much, the world in general, though I do, but really the thing I was actually worried about was humanity because, the planet's going to be pretty much fine because it doesn't seem to really care what exists here, whether it's, thunder lizards, humans, six-eyed telepathic slugs, whatever. The planet's going to be fine. But we're kind of hosing ourselves in terms of our own ecological balance. So I studied chemistry and wanted to contribute. And I also studied jazz performance. So I'm a sax player, and they were both basically mathematic recombinant systems, and that's kind of how it always jived for me. So yeah, I did always want to do this. It was sort of my jam from early on.
It's amazing that you had a chemistry set when you were a kid and you were playing with it.
Yeah, back in the day when you could get real chemicals, titanium dioxide, and you could buy look, arsenic, things that would be completely banned nowadays.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. I mean, like, let's say you went through college, you were really excelling in this, and now you're creating like these awesome formulas for all of us. But I just want to get into what is it that is really driving you? You mentioned the humanity aspect. Well, what part of the humanity aspect is it? Is it to better humanity's health? Is it to balance ecologically what's going on in the world? Because you mentioned the world's going to be fine. That's really interesting to hear. But I'm trying to get a better idea of that.
So when I opened my lab, I wrote down 6 things on the board that I wanted to solve before I died, and I've just been going down the list trying to make as much of a dent. And they're all things that I felt would move the needle for humanity as a whole, right? I mean, and this is not to be esoteric about it, but my take is kind of the more people evolve in terms of their sort of level of consciousness, the better things get on the planet. The more people express love and connection and cohesiveness between one another, the better things are. And so with my particular skill set, I wanted to make a dent in aging, cancer, clean water, green energy, global warming, and then the only weird one, it was superluminal travel, because I figured, in the event that we actually want to take the civilization to the next stage, we have to have a way to viably get off the rock. And doing it by strapping ourselves to bottle rockets, although common, doesn't really seem like the best way to do it. And so I've been lucky enough that I've made pretty solid strides on all fronts there. I think in the global warming front, I developed recently and just patented a carbon negative concrete. And so normally concrete accounts for about 8% of the global carbon burden. So if it were a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, behind China, then the US, and then concrete if it were a country. And so initially I had been contacted to develop a carbon neutral concrete. And I did that. And that was, honestly, it was really simple. So I thought, well, if you can go neutral this easily, how much can you push the envelope? So I negated the first 8%, and then I came up with a way to kind of redefine the matrix internal to the concrete and knock out another 24%. So it would take out 32% of the annual greenhouse gas burden worldwide, which about 13 gigatons, right? Now, everybody's not going to ubiquitously adopt that, so it's not going to have that kind of impact. But in my I can dream kind of world, if it really got pervasive use across the whole spectrum, it'd knock out a huge chunk. So that was one, and it kind of fell in the bailiwick of things I was trying to do for global warming. So that was a pretty legit stroke. And then for aging, there have been a lot of things that I've done, like the wizard sciences stuff. Most of that is built around a lot of the research I did for nanoparticles and using nanoparticles to negate oxidative stress load inside the cell. And as it turns out, when you end up whacking oxidative stress loads, you can end up really prolonging cell span. And the aggregate of cell span is, of course, you prolong lifespan, but more importantly, health span. So I think to date, I probably still hold the record for longest lived mammal in a lab. So on average, I had a cohort of P53 knockout mice live 93% longer than they're supposed to. And wow. And for everybody, P53s, it's kind of a weird mouse. It's basically your P53 gene is your tumor suppressor gene. So these are the unfortunate cancer mice that you always see with, the idiopathic tumor presentation where they develop all these tumors spontaneously over their whole body. Mine did not. So they didn't get the tumors, and they lived 93% longer. And the reason that was actually kind of impactful to me was because in oncology, when you're doing research, everybody uses P53 knockouts because it's a really good mouse model. And so there are quite literally hundreds of thousands of them that have been done. So we have incredibly well-defined mortality curves. So it wasn't some kind of like, ooh, look, 93% longer in some random setup. It was a very defined control with, negative homozygous knockout mice. So we could say very definitively it should have been within this parameter, but in lieu of occurring that way, it actually happened this far out. So it was a pretty substantial thing, and it also, like I said, they didn't present with tumors. They actually died of old age, which was
wow.
Yeah, which was bizarre. It was, sometimes you do an experiment, you get a result, and go, well, that's not at all what I was thinking would happen. And then that was one of those. So then I kind of pulled the thread on that, looking at what I could do to modulate, human biology, not just mammalian biology in general, because I've done it with, cats, dogs, mice in the labs, horse, and then people, and kind of see what sort of effects I could get. Because, there are a lot of people who are doing incremental gains where you'll do something and you go like, oh, this will give you a 5% extension, a 2% extension.
Right.
I wanted to do something that kind of sublimated past that, where we were just going, well, let's sort of moonshot this. Let's see what we can actually do and push the envelope. In fact, one of the products that I know you use started out as an experiment where I was trying to upregulate ATP production, and I very much upregulated ATP production inside the mitochondria, but to a point where the mitochondria actually start popping. And if you potentiate too much electron flow across their membranes, they pop like little popcorn. And so you kind of find the bounds of like what's safe. And in that case, that was certainly not safe. And then once you know how far you can push it before the system breaks, then you start to dial it back in. And so after doing that, I ended up at a place where I was able to upregulate neural potentiation, because I was increasing ATP synthesis inside the mitochondria in neurons. And so that made a pretty substantial difference for things like, all the diseases of cognitive decline, that we all look at. So I was trying to kind of see what I could do to knock out symptoms like that. But again, go for the real heavy hits instead of just doing the little incremental additive sort of stuff. And so, that's kind of what drives me. It's places where I see that I can take something that I see a little differently and apply it for the benefit of everybody. Like this morning, I was on the phone with the director of Goddard Space Flight Center, because I've developed a gamma ray shielding system. And, that's impactful, because we can get to outer space, we can certainly get to the moon, we can get to Mars, and that might be fine for one generation, but the radiation is going to really just rip apart our genome. So generation 1 would probably be perfectly fine. Generations 2 and 3 would be probably similar to thalidomide babies, and that that doesn't sound so good to anybody. So it's stuff like that. It's just what drives me is wanting to help in the ways that I feel like I can exert some pressure and leverage in a positive direction.
Yeah, I love, man, that you wrote those 6 things on a board and you follow them, and it's like your life's work and you're just knocking them out. And I always, I submit to the audience is like, not only because so much of us are just not in touch with what even our life purpose is, right? And you were blessed enough to be like seeing your talents as a child and just carrying it onward into adulthood. But a lot of us are lost in that capacity. So it's really amazing that, one, if we touch on that sense of purpose, and then we see how we can serve humanity. And I sort of admire the way you've tied that up all together and now just knocking them out, crossing them across the board. Now, you mentioned nanoparticles. A lot of us don't know what those are. So what are nanoparticles? How do they work? Does it make, let's say, for example, you have a formula out nanoparticles. How much less absorption are we going to find versus one with nanoparticles?
Okay, so there's a lot of different things. Nano is it's a designation for size. It means billionth, right? So a nanoparticle is something that's measured in billionths of a meter. And in the case of the ones I play with, I deal with a lot of carbon-60, which is quite literally a soccer ball made out of carbon atoms that's 1.1 nanometers wide. So it's a very, very small soccer ball. Formerly a truncated icosahedron, but literally it's a soccer ball. And so it has a bunch of nifty properties because of the way the molecule is clustered, that it has delocalized orbitals and can handle interactions, and it can be either antioxidant in nature or a pro-oxidative sort of function. Like if you hit it with light, it pumps out singlet oxygen, which is super reactive, like ozone. And you can use that to, go through, and there are certain times like with cancer where you actually want to shred a cell membrane, right? You're looking for some sort of reductive mechanism where you're going to strip things off and break the cells. Usually you're looking for, in my take, usually I'm looking for protective mechanisms to kind of buffer it, because not shockingly, our bodies are kind of consistently under assault from our environment these days. It's not like the 1500s where we'd be surrounded by flowing fields of wheat and springs and nice trees. We're kind of like the cats next to us spraying the weeds with glyphosate and, setting up a new wireless router for our meters. And, we're constantly under EMF stress, chemical stress, social stress. I mean, the past year, the pandemic has just beat us to pieces psychologically, I think. And all of those things in aggregate, they really start to function to damage our bodies. And so, that's the thing, is I'm trying to use, in this case, nanoparticles to negate that, because the nanoparticles that I'm playing with, what I started doing is binding them with lipids. So it's just a fat. And what that does is it kind of gives it an all-access pass to go in through the cell membranes. So you ingest these lipids bound to nanoparticles, they move into the cell membrane, and then the cells actually metabolize the lipids and pull them away from the nanospheres. And then the nanospheres, because they have a charge, they actually move and translocate through the cytoplasm and bind into the mitochondria. And there's some really good papers in the NIH database on that, if anybody's curious, they can check them out. But when they bind there, what they do is they protect the mitochondria from oxidative stress. And that's important because the mitochondria are, the powerhouse of the cell. And so that's where we get our actual juice, right? ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And if you negate oxidative stress, I showed that you get very clearly somewhere between 18 and 58% upregulation in your ATP output. And it's not that you're actually additively putting things in the system. You're literally just blocking loss, right? Because your body is getting assaulted by stresses, and that impedes your ability to locate the electrons where they need to be so you can generate energy. And so most of the kind of the basis for my nanoparticle work has been figuring out how to use the things in those compounds to allow us to better our systems. And then in some cases, like the Neural RX from Wizard Sciences, that I thought, okay, well, if I can negate the oxidative stress load and provide more energy, that's affecting one side of the cycle, right? I'm blocking system loss, but what can I do to additively up it? And so, for that, I put in, nicotinamide mononucleotide, NMN. So NMN balanced with resveratrol and a couple of other things, and just spike the other side of the curve. So you've got a higher energy production in the different complexes of the electron transport chain and less system loss. So you end up with a really robust amount of energy, and cognitively, people feel that. So, that's kind of what I'm doing on the nanoparticle front. And that particular thing is just for cognitive function. And if you have cognitive decline of some sort, it's really impactful. But if you don't, it's a hell of a nootropic, which is, I'm lucky enough that I don't have cognitive decline, but I'm constantly hammering that stuff back so that I can have a really high-end neural performance.
Yeah, it's so powerful. So to understand, for the average listeners, right, and me, the nanoparticles basically go into the cell by way of lipids, the fat, and the fat's taken apart, and those nanoparticles are delivered to the mitochondria, right? And the mitochondria then upregulate their energy production, right? So, in what place does the resveratrol in the Neural RX come in? Does that help upregulate it more? Is that my understanding?
So the nanoparticles, when you provide an oxidative buffer, the net effect is you have more energy, but it's not because you're providing more energy, it's because you're simply stopping loss. So when you do both, right, you stop the loss, and then you do something like NMN and resveratrol, that's working on the other side of the wave. You're upregulating it. So what you want is, the loss to go down and the output to go up. And then you end up with this crazy robust amount of intracellular energy output. And you've experienced it. I mean, you just cognitively, you're just popping.
Yes. Yes, I did. So I actually tried it before we even spoke or we even met, right? And I was just chatting with the page on Instagram, which was like a new page. And I saw it from my friend who was actually on the show, Dr. Molly Malouf. And she was talking about it. I go, what is this? And she's like, you need to try it. I ordered it. And I took 2 tablespoons because I always want to go for the highest amount. I don't know. And I was buzzing. You know, in college, I've tried Adderall a few times to study. I was buzzing. And I was like, I go to my assistant. I go, I need to talk to the developer of this right now. I need to talk to the developer. And it was just fantastic because ever since then, what I did notice, and it has been the best thing about the Neural RX from Wizard, is I haven't had, because I've suffered with mold and I had some really, really bad cognitive issues like 3 years ago. And it was crazy because there was moments where I'm like, whoa, is this how dementia feels? Because I couldn't remember words. I couldn't recall short-term memories. It was just a mess. And I haven't had any residual symptoms at all. And they were slight, but they just went, and I feel like my brain is on like fire in a good way, not oxidative fire, good fire. But you mentioned something about those who do have dementia or at risk for dementia. This plays a role outside of a nootropic, right? And in what capacity? How does it work for those people who may have Alzheimer's or dementia or are predisposed to it?
So there are a couple of components there. And what I said earlier about kind of upregulating the energy potentiation. So when your neurons fire, there's a couple of different ways they can actually fire. They can fire, electrochemically or electrically. And if you're not able to span the gap with the neural firing, if you up the energy, just like getting a spark across any gap, if you have more energy, there's more potentiation, so you can jump the gap. So one thing, when you upregulate the energy in a system, you have more firing capacity. So you literally have more neural firing capacity. One of the more important things, and I think this actually plays a role with people who have mycotoxic exposure, because you are obviously, mold is just mycotoxins and they blast your system. But your brain specifically, it wraps things in amyloid plaques, beta amyloids and tau proteins. But that's actually a protective mechanism. It's not, to my way of thinking, really a disease. It's actually your body trying to block some sort of potential detriment. The same thing occurs around your midsection. You eat too much sugar, you have something that throws your pH out, your body sequesters it in your omentum and fat cells, and you store it rather than have it damage the system so that it stabilizes you. So your brain, of course, follows the same function. And so when you get some sort of toxic exposure that would, say, over a couple decades lead to a thing like Alzheimer's or, dementia or just general cognitive decline, you end up with all these plaques and things. But I put a proteolytic enzyme in the mix there that's small enough to pass the blood-brain barrier so that it can actually break apart those components and start to debride the brain. Basically, you build up trash over time and there's not enough cycling out. And when you upregulate the energy, it triggers the glymphatic system while you're sleeping at night because you have more energy. So your brain basically has a wash cycle. So at night, when you upregulate that, it triggers the glymphatic system and you use interstitial fluid and cerebrospinal fluid to wash your brain. And when you break those components down into something that's really tiny with the proteolytic enzymes, then you start losing those aggregate plaques and it pulls them out. One of the other things that's kind of interesting is there's pyroquinoline quinone in there and PQQ. And I pushed it to the threshold where I could upregulate the energy, but I was worried about having problems just because there was so much potentiation. So I thought, well, how do I distribute that load? Because kind of like the analogy I always say is like a car. You can take a Ford Fiesta and crank it up to 500 horsepower with nitric oxide or something like that, but you're going to blow the motor. So I thought, well, rather than use the V4 and crank it up, I'll just make it a V10. So the PQQ stimulates mitochondrial biogenesis. So you end up with a lot more mitochondria. So you distribute the load, the electrical potential load. So it's not completely redlining you all the time, and you're not at risk of damaging your mitochondria. you're just replete with mitochondria. So you end up with the ability to have a lot of energy, but not overtax your system. So you're washing your brain, you're upregulating the energy, you're allowing for more neural potentiation. And then one of the things that's critically important is there's a huge, like a very precipitous drop in the cytokine response in the first 2 hours after taking it. So it knocks out neural inflammation. So you basically, for things like a cytokine storm or something like that, you can really massively downregulate it because the interaction with the nanoparticles drops out cytokine responses. So your IL-2, 8, 6, 10, all those things, CRP, they just crater. And when that happens, you literally just function more effectively. And you can feel it. I mean, you feel the fog lift because that inflammatory response is kind of across your whole body. I mean, probably the most accurate correlate is just kind of like broad spectrum rheumatoid arthritis. It doesn't feel really good to move. But when you drop that inflammatory response out, man, you're golden. You can move again, you can get around, and it's the same function. So people don't think of it, but just a small shift in inflammatory response causes an actual change in the pressure, and you don't function as well.
Amazing that you took that step-by-step improvements to how the brain works and all of the things that really hold back our brain function, right? Because it's not just the tau proteins or the inflammation, but it's also, are you moving that stuff through the lymphatic system at night? So and then with that, like, let's say for me, I've made sure that I've been sleeping better and getting to bed earlier, right? And making sure that I have a full sleep hygiene, full regimen before I get to bed. So I know that I can optimize the effects. So I actually highly recommend it to everyone. This is, if you know my work, I'm very careful about any like products I talk about or companies I talk about. It's very organic for me, but I have been like such a fan of it. It's amazing work.
I really genuinely approve that or appreciate that. I mean, the thing for me is like, I'm scratching my own itch, right? I needed something that would enhance my own neural performance because I'm constantly trying to push myself. One pro tip on that, after about the third week, you start actually genning out new neurons. Like your body produces them every day, but you go through this thing called synaptic pruning because neurons are crazy consumptive, right? They're just, in terms of energy consumptive, they account for 2 to 3% of your body mass, but your brain consumes 20 to 25% of your oxygen. Wow. So they're very, very dense and very resource consumptive. So if you don't need them, your body, in an attempt to kind of hit a nice homeostasis, eliminates them through synaptic pruning. But if you put yourself under cognitive load and a different sort of cognitive load, about the third week after taking them, your output of new neurons goes about 2 to 3x over what you'd normally see with BDNF or NGF1. And those, for the normal listeners, those are brain-derived neurotrophic factor and neural growth factor 1. And that's what your body uses to stimulate neural outgrowths. So instead of just getting the normal function, you get like a 2-3x of the outcropping. Normally that wouldn't really matter. Your body would just synaptically prune them and you'd go back to usual and you'd just feel good. But if you put them under load, they actually cement themselves into place and you literally increase the neural density in your brain. So you have more neurons and hence more resources to do things, which is why, like my kids make fun of me because I'm constantly, like every 3 weeks, I'm cycling on to learn something new that I've never done before, just so I can try and pack more neural density in.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's what I actually do this really interesting workout called Functional Patterns out here. And the workout is so challenging. I do it twice a week and they're demanding my brain to work with my body to do these movements, which doesn't make sense to me, right? And it's very mechanistic, but
that sounds amazing.
Oh my God. I would look into it if I was you because, they're telling me how to do a sit-up, right? And they're directing me every part of my body, my shoulders, pull out your chest, tighten your abs. And, normally, I don't know, maybe I could do 30, 40 sit-ups straight, no problem. 3 sit-ups and I'm shaking. My stomach is shaking, my arms are shaking because it's reconnecting the brain to the body. And basically they work with the chain. They work with gait, movement, posture, and making sure the whole chain in perfect ratios are complementing. So I would actually try it out if I was you. It's amazing stuff. But
well, that sounds incredible. That's the kind of stuff I'm always looking for.
Yes. So I bring it up because it's a new challenge, every physical challenge, every single week. So, and the whole point is to make sure everyone is, you challenge yourself, do a puzzle, right? Learn something new, do things with your left hand, because that's going to help cement those neural connections.
I've been writing with my left hand. I've been doing dual in-back training, taught myself to juggle, worked on rap. That was an interesting one.
Rapping?
Rapping, yeah. I had my kids.
I do it every day.
Do you seriously? Yeah, I did.
Every single day, 3 songs.
Yeah, I did Logic's 100 Miles and Running. And that was...
oh, amazing.
Yeah, primarily because my daughter said, no way in the world.
I would actually challenge you to do it yourself with just instrumental beats. And like, it's so amazing because it not only like am I pulling my vocabulary quickly, but I'm also like thinking faster on my feet. So it just helps your articulation.
It was surprisingly hard, because I had sort of the rhythmic background because I did jazz improvisation. But my God, man, the verbal acuity that was required to pull that stuff off and to do it in a flow with the pronunciation and to actually articulate. I have a newfound respect. The one that I transitioned to after Logic was a fellow named Khan, and Concepts 2. If you have not listened to that, do yourself a favor and listen to it's KAANCEPTS 2.
I would, and you'd appreciate this. I do it in the sauna while I'm sweating, so I'm very uncomfortable. I'm super uncomfortable already. So I like 3 instrumentals every day and just like going to the beat and quickly developing it. But I know you'd appreciate that. I love that you do that. Super cool. So now we talked about the brain and all of the mechanisms of like this awesome formula. Is there something that you're developing for the body now, just overall?
Yeah. So I have one that just handles somatic cells the same way. I developed it for guys that were trying out for the Olympics this year. They were doing the Olympic trials for pole vaulting, or as I termed it, reverse limbo. And so I set this up so that they could really just kind of crush it, because for the pole vaulters, they work on grip strength a lot. And I was trying to do something that would, again, not just give them like the 1.5% to 2% gains, which would have been phenomenal. But I was trying to do something a little outsized. So I came up with a formulation and did some kind of intracellular magic. And they were getting like force outputs to 13 to 17% increases, which, I mean, if you've worked with elite athletes, they were over the moon, because that kind of stuff does not happen. Like when you're at that level, you're looking for little, couple of seconds,
right?
Like a centimeter makes a huge difference. It's the difference between qualifying, not qualifying, getting gold, not getting gold. And so these guys were just happy as a clam because they were able to get, new force output with their grip strength and new sprint speeds and just, very different outputs. So it's called Olympic RX. And I did that for these guys that were trying out for the Olympics.
Is it out yet?
Actually, well, I don't know when this podcast will air, but it's supposed to be. We've been trying it for the past like 6 months, and it's literally just about to go out. It's got the handy dandy Vitruvian Man on it.
That'll be out by the time this comes out.
Yeah, if this comes out a week from now, then it'll be on the market. Yeah.
So I have to ask, are these formulas okay? Because people love putting stuff in their coffee and in their matcha and in their tea. Is it okay in heat, or does it have to be not in heat?
No, it's actually, I tested them at the university where I do a lot of the work. I tested everything, and I did gel electrophoresis to read out and see how the proteins broke down and how everything was structured. And everything actually was heat stable up to 80 C, which is crazy hot. Like 150, 160 degree range. And the reason for that is when you set up those nanoparticles and configure them with the lipids, you actually end up with a nanobuffer. So it's not only heat stable, it actually blocks the degradation from stomach acid. So you're pH stable as well as heat stable. And part of the benefit of that is, like the Neural RX, that's in a caprylic acid base. And the reason for that was I needed something that would hit the liver and fractionate into the liver into ketone bodies, because your brain will absorb those. So they'll get shuttled directly from your liver into your brain. The other one is in an oleic acid base because there's a real readily available swap on the cell membranes through most of your body's normal somatic cells with oleic acid. And I'm sure that's just because we've kind of evolved, because it's one of the primary vegetable acids or fatty acids. So that works really well in the rest of the system, but it breaks down in your stomach. And to make sure that the components weren't getting whacked, I needed to set things up to have kind of a nano buffer around them so that your stomach acid wouldn't just eviscerate it. Because it's, you can do all this stuff, but if it's not bioavailable, it's pointless, So one of the things I try and look at is like the minimum effective dose, and then figure out, okay, what's governing that? Because a lot of times it's not exactly what you'd think. Like sometimes it's stomach acid, sometimes it's heat, sometimes it's blood flow. With the ozonated oils that I do at Biocharged, that was one of the things is, you can get it past the GI tract, but then it goes into the small intestine and at the tail end of the tract, and you're trying to get perfusion throughout the entire system, right? So I had to use, hypermethylcellulose capsules to get it, like the double layered capsules, so that we get all the way down to the end of the GI tract so that you can get it to go into the bloodstream instead of just breaking apart in the gut. Now, the caveat to that is if you're trying to do something like WAC Giardia or Candida, you actually want it to break open there, because then it's kind of like dropping a payload where you've got, some sort of bacterial issue.
Right. Especially, so are there any formulas? Because there's a lot of people who are now suffering with gut infections, like you just mentioned, Candida or dysbiosis. Is there anything that you've been developing or will come out with that is targeting there?
Yeah, so I have a whole product called Biocharged. The product name is Resistor. The company is Biocharged, and it's an ozonated oil, which you've got your Tesla in the background, and you can see the same little lightning bolts. I'm a big fan of Nikola Tesla. He was a sharp guy. And when I first started looking at the ozonated oils, it was actually because I was looking at how to clean systems. So initially I started looking at UV, and then UV was a little tricky because you couldn't get the rays to go around solid objects. So I started looking at ozone, and then, when you really start looking at ozone, you're going to find your way to Tesla. And Tesla had done this thing in 1904 where he made the Tesla Ozonated Oil Company. And basically he took olive oil and he reduced it through a triple reduction oxidative pass or redox reaction to stabilize it as this stabilized oils that have one reactive oxygen molecule kicked off. And so when you would ingest them, they would react and they would do, they would detoxify things, they would kill bacteria and viruses. And so I thought, wow, this is really cool. So I checked out companies that were doing it currently, and everybody across the board worldwide that I could find, everybody's process was like a 2 to 3 week process where they make these ozonated oils. But when I read Tesla's work, his process was an 8-week process. And I thought, that guy's really smart. He's probably not wasting 3 times the resources to do this. What is he doing? Right. Well, so it turned out he had these giant magnetic field beds. So he had a trough on top of all these electromagnets that he would power up with high strength electromagnetic fields. And because it's a polar molecule, just meaning it has a positive and negative orientation, he was basically aligning the whole thing into single file structure. So he could get the highest per unit density of all these reactive species lined up next to one another in a gel without interacting with one another and losing its potential. So he was just getting the highest density, which is why his stuff, was kind of famed as having all these miraculous abilities, is because it was legitimately stronger. I mean, he figured out a way to use electromagnetic fields to upregulate the strength of this compound that he was making. It was truly genius, and it so impressed me.
Poof.
Because literally, nobody in the, since he stopped doing it in 1910, it's been over 100 years and nobody bothered to do the process the way this guy had figured it out. I think probably because they were like, it makes no sense. Why would you do that? It costs more and takes more time. But when I looked at it, I thought, Jesus, this guy is so sharp. And I thought, well, I've got 100 years of new technology. What would he do if he were alive now? And so I came up with a bunch of crazy theories, and then started testing them out over the span of many months. And what I ended up doing was using lasers and dichroic beam splitters and electromagnetic fields and plasma drivers and acoustic wave drivers to get the molecules entrained and then actually lock them into a specific state using the gel as a holographic media, which sounds, I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but really, if you think about glass and a holographic plate, right? Everybody's seen a holographic plate where the image is contained inside that. Now, what people don't generally know is that if you shatter that holographic plate, every molecular size piece of that contains all of the information for the entire hologram. So you can have just one molecule of the thing and all of the information for that entire waveform that was created when the two lasers smashed together is contained down into that piece. The other thing that people don't really know is if you shine a light through it, you can see that image that's trapped in there. But if you shine a laser through it and you use a coherent source of light, what you get is actually photonic scale resolution. So you can see and recreate something down to better than subatomic scale if you're firing a laser through it, which is amazing. I mean, at least to me, I kind of nerd out on that stuff. I've been making lasers since I was a little kid, but that's one of the things that I thought was genius, is that you can take these things and you lock these components in. So the idea of taking a spin state and upping it so that it had more energy and more information in it, and then locking it seemed possible because I already had a precursor. Glass, we think of it as a solid, but it's really not. It's an amorphous solid. So it's not like most things that are crystalline and the structure is really locked. It's just in a different time scale. So it's kind of like a soap bubble that's actually moving downward over time, right? And the top is moving slowly, but it's moving very, very slowly. So for us, it seems like it's solid, but it's really more of a liquid, if you will. And so in terms of relative scale, the laser is the outlier, and the gel and the glass are really similar in terms of their speed. So I figured, well, you can lock information into glass. Why couldn't I lock information into this gel? And as it turns out, you can. So yeah, I set up a plasma confinement field and got everything tuned in and amped up the right way. And then I fired lasers through to lock the spin states and just encode the information. And it sounds strange, but the way you can prove it out, like the easiest test is take a 300 milligram capsule of an ozonated oil. And if you run a spec analysis on it, which I've done, you get the same exact thing that you get when you run the spec analysis on mine. The difference is when you take 300 mgs of a regular ozonated oil, you feel nothing. You take one of the 300 mg capsules of the biocharge stuff, and instantly your mitochondria start to upregulate because your body thinks that it's gotten this huge oxidative insult. And so it rallies and it starts pumping out superoxide dismutase, glutathione, and it upregulates your mitochondria to fight this crazy assault that's just happened, even though there hasn't actually been an assault. So you kind of, you trick your body into like this hormetic response where it thinks it's being attacked, and then it upregulates everything. And actually, the way I use it is I use it in conjunction with that Olympic serum. So I'll take the biocharge stuff in the morning to make my body think that it's had this big pro-oxidative insult, and then it naturally upregulates its antioxidant protection. And then I take the other stuff that puts a bunch of exogenous antioxidants into my system. So I really knock down oxidative load. And the one thing I do tell everybody, like the instructions always say, like, take this on a daily basis. That's really for compliance, because people have a hard time generally like saying, take it at a random schedule.
Yeah, sure.
But really the best way to do it, like if anybody actually tries these and wants to know, the best way to do it is to do it on an intermittent pattern where you constantly shake it up. It'd be like doing the same workout consistently every day. At a certain point, you're not going to make any gains because your body's very adaptive, right? It's going to know what's coming and it's going to build itself up to prepare for that. Whereas if you shake it up and you do a different approach and you're constantly putting a new muscle group under stress through a different mechanism, your body doesn't know what to expect. And so it gets stronger. And that's, that's ultimately what we're going for, right? Is super vibrant health where you have a ton of energy, not a lot of pain, your inflammation is down, and and you're firing on all cylinders. I mean, that's ultimately, I think all of us in kind of the med space, that's what we're going for.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So we talked about the Neural RX from Wizard, the Olympic one that's going to be out when this comes out by Wizard Sciences. and then the biocharge one. Two of those I need in my hands because I'm going to get started on them already. You already know.
I'll happily send them to you. I mean, proof's in the pudding, man. That's the thing is everything on the Wizard Sciences front has developed really organically because it was something I had been working on internally, but I didn't even have a website up. We put the website up so people could get it because there was actually such a demand for it just from people who knew people that we actually that we actually had to put one up. And then a woman started doing TikTok videos about them and got like 1.2 or 1.3 million views, and it got pulled from TikTok because they thought it was a paid endorsement because the review was so good.
Wow. It wasn't just like a natural, organic one.
They didn't think it was organic, so they pulled it, and then there was this huge beef over that, and everybody got into a big fuss, and then they ended up having to put it back on because she demonstrably showed that she was just a customer doing this, and then a lot of people started taking it. It was great. I mean, actually, from the standpoint of like getting this out to people, it's been fantastic because my thing is I want, like I said, I'm scratching my own itch. I want people to have access to this stuff because we're constantly under assault, and this is something that'll help fix that. So
I love it. I love it. I love that you've developed that. I love that your heart's in the development, right? That's the driving force. When you have the passion driving it, the product is always just organically just is delivered and making changes in people's lives, and it grows and it grows. It's always the energy behind it. And you and I both have an appreciation for the energy behind things. I mean, we both love Tesla, right? And that's the premise of everything that he was talking about is energy. Everything is energy, just like Einstein too. So I love that you're developing. Anything new and exciting coming up that we can look forward to from your side before we wrap it up?
Let's see things. Well, there are a couple of things that are exciting to me, like the gamma ray shielding. I'm really jazzed to get that out the door because I think that'll help a lot with space travel. There's some propulsion system stuff that I'm working on, ionic propulsion drives, because again, I don't think strapping ourselves to giant bottle rockets is really the way to go. I think there are better ways. There are a couple things. There's a topical that I've been working on for biocharge that I think is going to be really good because I want to do something to kind of knock out the effects of using a lot of the chemicals we use when we use antibiotics. It's overwhelming, right? And you can do the same things that you do through antibiotics just through basic chemical interaction. That's actually why ozone is so legit. It's nature's disinfectant, right? Nothing stops you when you rip electrons off, and so that's why, I mean, most people have smelled ozone after a lightning storm, and it's why everything seems so fresh and clean, right? Big rainstorm, lots of lightning, you get that kind of acrid semi-sweet smell, and that's the ozone rolling through and just cleaning everything, so it completely cleans the air. And that's why I'm working right now, and we're about to release a topical, and it will be something that just replaces like Neosporin sorts of things, because there's no need to keep. Well, I mean, we're reaping the detrimental results of that in terms of animal populations. Like too many antibiotics for all of the different things like cattle and chicken and stuff like that. That's got a cascading effect, man. It's catching up with us now, and the unfortunate bit is, kind of putting on my futurist hat, we're right at the front edge of the curve where a lot of the things that we've been doing for decades now are really going to slam us. Xenoestrogens, phytoestrogens, a lot of things that are in the runoff in the water table now when you test it that are dysregulating, endocrine dysregulators. That kind of stuff has real results, real consequences. Testosterone levels dropping 1% per year since 1980. I don't know if you know Amy Killen, Dr. Amy Killen.
I know her well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Amy and I are working on a thing for erectile dysfunction, and there's some things that fix what you can fix when you can fix it, right? And so I'm trying to move the needle, and those are the things that I think actually will help. And I have Hair Science System, which regrows hair, which sounds like just look at it. It's actually ridiculous. And I just changed the cell function, and I didn't really think the dihydrotestosterone thing that everybody always blathers about.
Yeah.
Come to find out, not really so important. More like a tertiary effect. You can elicit the right response without having to worry about that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, those are the things to take a line from Amy. You know, she always says like sex and skin are confidence and connection. And it's actually, I try and look at the totality of things. And I think if you can hit people and help them where they're really struggling, and a lot of times now it is connection and confidence and, you know, socially getting out of our shells. So those are the things that I'm excited about.
I love it. And the hair formula, what was it called for people who want to check it out?
Yeah, hairsciencesystem.com.
All right. I love it, man. I can't wait to have you back on, but this time it'll be in LA, sitting in front of me, and we'll take a teaspoon or a tablespoon of the formulas and really get buzzing on it.
Yeah, you know, one thing, so kind of a pro tip, right? When you start doing the Olympic serum, there's a function called superprecipitation of skeletal muscle actomycin, which basically is the super nerdy way of saying that if there's a dose-dependent curve with your output, your brain typically downregulates your neural firing for your muscle entrainment. The recruitment only happens to about 25 to 30% of the sarcomeres or the muscle fibers. And if you do too much of that stuff, you will recruit all of the muscle. So just pro tip, keep it a little bit on the low level. And if you dose too much, you'll have those kind of Captain America moments where you're throwing around weights that are not normally doable. And it seems very cool at first. But having torn my hamstring twice and pulled the muscles in my lower back, word of caution,
can injure yourself.
Yeah, you can your muscularity is fine. You can handle the load with your muscles, but your tendons and your ligaments, because they perfuse more slowly with blood and they don't grow at the same rate. It's not stimulating chondrocytes at the same rate that it is muscle cells. So you're not going to be able to handle the load. So it's really awesome. You can do some great stuff with it. It'll make you feel kind of unstoppable and your energy output goes through the roof. You'll need fewer calories, but just proceed with caution, you know?
Proceed with caution.
Yeah.
And the dosage is on there on how to take it cautiously.
Yeah, I just recommend 2 teaspoons. Like I've literally done, 4 tablespoons in a day. And I did that when I was testing it out. I did that because I wanted to see, kind of what the threshold was. And that was kind of the threshold. Beyond that point, you're doing stuff, because I found it because I was like, oh my God, I'm so strong. And then when I realized what was going on, there was a Russian study that showed what was happening with the dose-dependent curve inside the muscles and the firing capacity. And it was really awesome. But again, when I pulled the muscles in my lower back because I was showing off with my kids, smashing a baseball like I had never hit one before, which looked amazing, sounded just incredible, like the super crack and the ball just goes flying off. But then I ended up writhing on the ground going, ah! So word of caution, amazing stuff. Go light.
Exactly.
Let your tendons, ligaments catch up. Basically, do it slow, but okay, awesome. Thank you so much, man. What a insightful conversation this was. It was like I'm inspired even more to really hit that level of the science and the mechanisms, and it's like it was awesome. But really, the take home for all of us, we have some products in here. If you have a history or family history or someone suffering with dementia, there's an awesome product out there that can be really, really helpful for us. Full body stuff, amazing stuff. The biocharge, which can really help us too overall. Check it out, everyone. Thank you for being on the show, Ian. I appreciate you so much.
I'll see you in LA.
All right, we'll do it.